My daughter-in-law looked me dead in the eye and said, "Margaret, there's no room for you at the resort this weekend. All suites are booked. You'll have to stay in the staff quarters." Again. I smiled and replied, "Of course, dear. I understand." But 3 days later, when I walked into the executive boardroom in my Valentino suit, my son turned white as a sheet. "Mom, what are you doing here?" The chairman stood up and said something that made both my children drop to their knees. And that's when they realized they'd been stealing from the wrong woman. But before we begin, I need to ask a small favor. If you enjoy stories about justice and karma, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need to hear them. Now let's begin. The scent of jasmine and salt water has always reminded me of paradise. That's why 35 years ago, my late husband Thomas and I bought a crumbling beachfront property in Monterey and transformed it into the Sapphire Cove Resort. We started with just 12 rooms. Thomas handled construction. I designed every detail. The hand-painted tiles in the lobby. The infinity pool that seemed to pour into the Pacific. The herb garden that supplied our restaurant. By the time our son Daniel turned 25, Sapphire Cove was a 5-star destination. Celebrities whispered about it. Travel magazines called it California's hidden jewel. When Thomas passed away 10 years ago, I was lost. Daniel had just finished his MBA. He sat at my kitchen table, held my hand and said, "Mom, let me help. You shouldn't carry this burden alone." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that my son had his father's integrity. So I made him general manager, gave him full operational control. I kept my ownership stake, of course, but I stepped back. I moved into the small cottage behind the main building, the same cottage where Thomas and I lived while we built our dream. 6 months later, Daniel married Vanessa. She was striking, ambitious, the kind of woman who wore designer sunglasses indoors and referred to servers as the help. I tried to welcome her. I really did. But Vanessa looked at me the way you look at outdated furniture, something that once had value, but now just takes up space. Their first act as a couple? They rebranded the resort. "Mom, your aesthetic is dated," Daniel explained, avoiding my eyes. "Vanessa has a vision. Modern luxury, minimalist chic." They ripped out my hand-painted tiles and replaced them with cold marble. They paved over the herb garden to expand the parking lot. They fired Rosa, our head chef of 20 years, because Vanessa wanted someone Instagram-worthy. And slowly, methodically, they erased me. I wasn't invited to management meetings anymore. When guests asked about the resort's history, staff were instructed to say, "The owners prefer privacy." I became invisible in the place I built. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. I was walking to the main building to pick up my mail. Yes, they made me collect it from the staff office, like I was an employee. When I heard shouting from Daniel's office, the window was cracked open. "We're over budget again, Vanessa. The investors are asking questions." "Then cook the books better, Daniel. Your mother doesn't look at the financials anyway. She's too busy playing gardener. I froze. I already moved $80,000 from the maintenance account to cover our Maldives trip. If she finds out, she won't. Your mother signed over operational control. She trusts you. We can do whatever we want. I stood there, hidden by the bougainvillea, and felt my world tilt. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my cottage with a bottle of Thomas's favorite bourbon and my laptop. I still had access to the resort's financial portal. They'd never thought to revoke it. Why would they? I was just the old woman in the cottage. What I found made my blood run cold. Over 3 years, they had systematically embezzled nearly $250,000. Fake vendor invoices, inflated renovation costs, consulting fees paid to shell companies that didn't exist, the Maldives trip, charged as a market research expedition, Vanessa's new Mercedes, company vehicle for client transport, their monthly shopping sprees, brand development and networking wardrobe investments. They were bleeding my resort dry while telling me there was no budget to fix the staff housing or give Rosa her pension. But the final insult? I found an email thread from 2 weeks ago. Vanessa to Daniel. Your mother asked about staying in the Sunset Suite for her birthday. I told her we're fully booked. LOL. Can you imagine? She'd probably complain about the thread count. She can stay in staff quarters like always. Daniel's response: perfect. The less she's around guests, the better. People might ask questions. I closed the laptop. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt something I hadn't felt in 10 years. Clarity. Thomas used to say, Margaret, you have the patience of a saint and the memory of an elephant. God help anyone who crosses you. They were about to meet the elephant. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. First, to Harrison Chen, my attorney. Harrison had handled our business affairs for 30 years. Margaret, it's been too long. What can I do for you? Harrison, I need to exercise my full ownership rights. I want to call an emergency board meeting, and I need you to review financial documents for potential fraud. Silence. How bad is it? $250,000 bad. Jesus. Margaret, I'm sorry. I'll have preliminary findings by tomorrow. Second call. Patricia Moreno, my accountant. Patricia, I need a complete forensic audit of Sapphire Cove's finances for the last 3 years. Discreetly. Margaret, if you're asking for forensic, you've found something serious. I have, and I need irrefutable documentation. You'll have it in 72 hours. Third call, Eleanor Brightwell. Eleanor sat on the board of directors, a position I'd created when we expanded, bringing in minority investors to fund the pool renovation. She was a retired hotel magnate and one of the few people who knew I still held 68% controlling interest. Eleanor, I'm calling the quarterly meeting early. Next Friday, I'll be presenting. Margaret, we haven't seen you in years. Daniel said you had stepped away from operations. Daniel said a lot of things. It's time the board heard my side. I could hear the smile in her voice. Oh, this is going to be interesting. For the next 5 days, I worked. Patricia's audit revealed everything. falsified expense reports, ghost employees, vendor kickbacks. Harrison prepared a legal brief outlining breach of fiduciary duty, embezzlement, and fraud. I had them dead to rights, but I didn't want just justice. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt: the humiliation, the invisibility, the betrayal. On Thursday night, I pulled my old wardrobe from storage, the Valentino suit I wore to our first major investor meeting, charcoal gray, impeccably tailored. The Cartier watch Thomas gave me for our 20th anniversary. My mother's pearl earrings. I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. For 3 years, I'd worn gardening clothes and let my hair go gray. I'd shrunk myself to fit their narrative. The woman staring back at me now, she wasn't someone you dismissed. Friday morning, Daniel and Vanessa left for their usual management breakfast at the country club, charged to the resort naturally. I walked into the main lobby. The new desk clerk, a young man named Marcus, looked up and did a double take. Mrs. Caldwell, I almost didn't recognize you. You look... Wow. Thank you, Marcus. Is the boardroom prepared? Yes, ma'am. The meeting starts at 10 a.m. Perfect. I'll be presenting today. He blinked. I thought Daniel was running the meeting. Plans change, I said with a smile. Could you do me a favor? Don't mention to anyone that I'm here. I want it to be a surprise. Marcus grinned. He'd worked at Sapphire Cove for 2 years. He'd seen how Daniel and Vanessa treated people. My lips are sealed, Mrs. Caldwell. At 9:55 a.m., I walked into the boardroom. The space was exactly as I remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. The mahogany table Thomas and I had commissioned from a craftsman in Carmel. Eleanor was already seated. She stood immediately, eyes wide. Margaret, you look magnificent. Thank you for coming, Eleanor. The other board members filed in. Richard Torres, our financial advisor, Dr. Susan Yee, who represented a group of local investors, and James Worthington, a silent partner who owned 8%. At 10:02, Daniel and Vanessa rushed in, flustered. Vanessa was mid-sentence, and I told the photographer we need the sunset shots for the website relaunch, so she stopped dead. Daniel's briefcase slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a thud. Mom? His voice cracked. What are you doing here? I smiled pleasantly. Good morning, Daniel. Vanessa, please sit down. Vanessa's face cycled through confusion, anger, then forced composure. She yanked out a chair and sat stiffly. Margaret, she said, voice dripping with false sweetness. What a lovely surprise. We didn't realize you'd be joining us. This is a board meeting for operational leadership. I'm aware, I said calmly. That's why I'm here. Eleanor, shall we begin? Eleanor stood, consulting her notes. This emergency session of the Sapphire Cove Resort Board of Directors is now called to order. Margaret Caldwell, majority shareholder and founder, has requested the floor. Daniel's face went from pale to red. Majority shareholder. Mom, you stepped down. I stepped down from daily operations, Daniel. I never relinquished ownership. Harrison Chen entered from the side door, carrying a leather portfolio. He placed it in front of me and took a seat along the wall. "Let's begin with a refresher," I said, opening the portfolio. 35 years ago, my late husband and I built this resort from nothing. 10 years ago, when Thomas passed, I maintained my 68% ownership stake while granting my son operational control. The board holds the remaining 32%. I looked directly at Daniel. "I trusted you with our legacy. I wanted to believe you'd honor your father's vision." Vanessa leaned forward. "Margaret, if this is about the rebranding, we can discuss it. This isn't about tiles, Vanessa." I slid the first document across the table. "Patricia's forensic audit. This is about $247,000 in embezzled funds over 3 years. The room went silent. Richard picked up the audit, his eyes scanning the pages. Dr. Yi leaned over to read with him. Daniel's mouth opened and closed. That's not... We can explain, or can you?" I pulled out the next document. Invoice from Lux Interiors, $45,000 for lobby renovation. Except I called Lux Interiors. They quoted the job at $28,000. Where did the extra $17,000 go? Vanessa's leg bounced under the table. "Coastal Consulting Group, $6,000 per month for strategic advisory services." I had Harrison investigate. Coastal Consulting Group is a shell corporation registered to a P.O. box. The bank account is in your name, Vanessa. It's complicated. Market research trip to the Maldives, $32,000. I spoke to Alicia in accounting. She told me you claimed it was to study international luxury hospitality trends. Strange, since you spent 10 days at a couples-only resort and never visited a single hotel property. Dr. Yi set down the audit. Her voice was ice. "This is fraud." Daniel shot to his feet. "We were investing in the business. Everything we did was to improve? I stood slowly. My voice didn't rise, but every word landed like a hammer. "You paved over the herb garden my husband planted because you needed 4 extra parking spaces. You fired Rosa, who'd been with us since the beginning, because Vanessa wanted a younger aesthetic in the kitchen. You told me there was no budget for staff housing repairs while charging $8,000 dinners to corporate accounts." I walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. "You know what hurts most? It's not even the money. It's that you made me feel like a burden. You made me live in the cottage like a groundskeeper. You denied me a room in my own resort for my birthday because I might embarrass you in front of guests." I turned back to face them. "You forgot who built this. You forgot that every tile you ripped out, every garden you destroyed, every person you dismissed, that was my life's work, our family's legacy, and you treated it like your personal piggy bank." Vanessa stood up, her voice shrill. "You gave it to us. You gave Daniel control. We made this place profitable." "You made it profitable by cutting corners and stealing." I nodded to Harrison. "Show them the rest." Harrison distributed the final document, a detailed comparison of revenue, guest satisfaction scores, and staff retention over 6 years. Under Margaret and Thomas's leadership, Harrison said, Sapphire Cove maintained a 4.8-star average rating, 89% staff retention, and steady annual growth of 7 to 12%. Under current management, ratings dropped to 4.2 stars, staff retention plummeted to 34%, and revenue growth is artificially inflated by price increases that have driven away loyal customers. Eleanor crossed her arms. You didn't build success, you liquidated goodwill. Daniel sank back into his chair, head in his hands. Vanessa pointed a shaking finger at me. You can't do this. We have contracts. We have rights. You have nothing, I said quietly. Harrison, under the operational agreement signed 10 years ago, Margaret Caldwell retains the right to revoke managerial authority with board approval in cases of gross misconduct or financial malfeasance. Given the evidence of embezzlement, the board can vote immediately. Eleanor didn't hesitate. I move to terminate Daniel Caldwell and Vanessa Caldwell from all operational roles, effective immediately. Seconded, Dr. Yee said instantly. Richard nodded. Agreed. James Worthington, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Unanimously supported. Vanessa's chair scraped back violently. This is insane. You're all going to listen to a bitter old woman? Careful, Vanessa, Eleanor said coldly. You're still in a room with witnesses and a lawyer. I looked at my son. Daniel, look at me. He slowly raised his head. There were tears in his eyes. I didn't want this, I said softly. I wanted to trust you. I wanted to believe that Thomas's son would have Thomas's heart. But you proved that blood means nothing without character. Mom, please, you're terminated, effective immediately. You have until 5 p.m. today to clear out your office. Security will escort you. Vanessa exploded. You vindictive bitch. We'll sue you for everything. With what money? I asked calmly. Your accounts are frozen pending criminal investigation. Harrison has already filed a report with the district attorney. If they choose to press charges, you'll both be explaining this to a judge, not a lawyer. The fight drained out of her. Daniel stood on shaking legs. Where are we supposed to go? I walked to the door and opened it. 2 security guards stood waiting. That's not my problem anymore. You made your choices. Now live with them. They left without another word. I watched from the boardroom window as security escorted them across the parking lot. Vanessa was crying. Daniel walked like a man in a trance. Part of me, the mother part, ached. But the part of me that built an empire from nothing, that part felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Eleanor approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Margaret. Doesn't feel like it yet. It will. After the board dispersed, I walked through the resort alone. I stopped at the lobby. The cold marble they'd installed was already cracking. Shoddy workmanship. Thomas would have been furious. Marcus was at the front desk. When he saw me, he straightened immediately. Mrs. Caldwell, I just heard. The staff is Well, we're all talking. Is it true? You're taking back over? It's true. His face split into a grin. Thank God. Do you know they cut our break times to save money? And they cancelled the employee appreciation dinners you used to throw. Not anymore, I said. Let's spread the word. All staff meeting tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. And Marcus, you're promoted to front desk supervisor. His eyes widened. Mrs. Caldwell, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me fix this place. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. I walked out to the cottage for the last time. Not to live there, to pack. The master suite in the main building had been Daniel and Vanessa's private residence. Not anymore. As I packed my few belongings, I found a photo album tucked under the bed. Pictures of Daniel as a boy, building sandcastles on the beach, helping Thomas paint the first set of guest rooms. When did I lose him? Was it gradual? Or was there a specific moment when ambition devoured integrity? I closed the album and set it aside. Some questions don't have answers. Over the next 6 months, I rebuilt everything. I hired Rosa back as executive chef. She cried when I called her. I restored the herb garden, planted jasmine all along the pathway, just like Thomas loved. I brought back the hand-painted tiles, commissioned from the same artisan, now in his 70s, who wept when he heard I wanted them back. Guest ratings climbed to 4.9 stars. Staff retention hit 92%. We became profitable again, real profit, not the artificial numbers Daniel inflated with theft and corner cutting. I hired a young, brilliant operations manager named Keisha, who understood that luxury isn't about cold marble and Instagram aesthetics. It's about warmth, details, heart. Daniel and Vanessa, they settled out of court. They repaid $150,000, everything they had left, after selling their house and cars. The DA declined to press criminal charges in exchange for full restitution and permanent severance from the business. Last I heard, Daniel was managing a mid-range hotel chain in Nevada. Vanessa left him 6 months after they lost everything. Apparently, poverty wasn't part of her vision. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes. Do I regret it? Not for a second. 3 weeks ago, on what would have been Thomas's 70th birthday, I sat on the terrace of the Sapphire Cove Resort at sunset. The ocean was turning gold. The jasmine was blooming. In the restaurant below, I could hear Rosa laughing with her kitchen staff. A young couple walked past, holding hands, whispering about how magical this place was. That's when I felt it. Peace. Not because I destroyed my son's career, not because I won, but because I remembered who I was. For too long, I let them make me small. I accepted invisibility because I thought that's what mothers do. Sacrifice, step aside, make room. But there's a difference between supporting your children and letting them devour you. Thomas used to say, "Margaret, you can love someone and still hold them accountable. In fact, that's the most loving thing you can do." He was right. So here's what I want you to take from my story. Your kindness is not weakness. Your generosity is not an invitation for exploitation. And your love does not obligate you to endure betrayal, whether it's family, friends, or colleagues. If someone treats your trust like a resource to mine, you have every right to close the mine. You built something. You earned something. Don't let anyone convince you that protecting what's yours makes you selfish. It makes you wise. I'm Margaret Caldwell. I'm 68 years old. I own the Sapphire Cove Resort, and I'm just getting started. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about justice, family, and finding your strength. In the comments, tell me, have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved? What city are you watching from? And remember, you're never too old to reclaim your power. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay strong.